Welcome back, my artist people. This episode I'm talking with Shlomo Zippel, a developer turned light artist based out of the Bay Area. We've kind of been in each other's orbits for years, but we've never actually met in person. Recently I started dating a friend of his, and that prompted me to get in touch with him. He was one of the original contributors to the software and the hardware driving some of Symmetry Lab's more iconic installations, and he's kind of been in the scene for the past 10 years. I figured we'd have a lot to talk about. Recently, Shlomo's been working on launching an experiential art space here in San Francisco. Kind of in the vein of Meow and Team Labs, but with a decidedly light art, avatar-esque feel to it. He's putting a unique spin on the concept of immersive art installations and collaborating with some really amazing local light artists. Simultaneously, he's developing an LED controller that he wants to take to market soon after his art space launches. It's really software that he's developing to run on a variety of microcontroller platforms. It incorporates a really capable pattern engine, and it works in a fundamentally distributed manner. Like, you deploy lots of these things into an installation, and they work like some kind of LED hive mind. The swarm of controllers collectively spread the processing power out across the entire fleet of devices, and that means there's no need for a massive and expensive server sitting at the center of the installation. It's a really cool concept, and I loved geeking out with him on how this type of system would change the way artists think about their installations. It's a great conversation, yet another amazing artist engineer doing really crazy things with technology. I think you're going to dig it. I hope we don't do this and like one of our audio tracks is just non-present. Yeah, but whatever. I mean, it's like I've been trying to get a chance to have a conversation with you for a while.
Yeah,
Totally. It's like so many of my friends know. Like I've heard your name for literally like 10 years. Like Randy knows you pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Ben Pollock knows you pretty well.
Yeah.
Felicia knows you really well.
Yeah,
and then I'm like, oh yeah, you're that Symmetry dude.
And I never actually worked at Symmetry, but
really?
I worked with them. Yeah.
I thought you were like I thought you were like drank the Kool-Aid. You were like
no.
doing the Symmetry thing.
I never worked at Symmetry. I made the hardware and the firmware for Tree of Tenere, and they ended up taking that design and using it in some of their projects after Tree of Tenere. But I never worked at Symmetry.
Yeah. How'd you feel about that?
About which part?
Well, them using it. Was it cool that they used your design?
It could have been better.
Yeah. But, yeah. It's funny. It's too bad, man. That's like the vibe that I get from talking to a lot of people who have worked with Symmetry in the past. And it's like, mainly it was, what's his name? That was like the main issue. And it's a shame because like, as like another person who's running it's hard to make this kind of business. Do you know what I mean? It's not an easy thing to do, and there's only a handful of people who are like actually doing it. And I like wanted to be his friend. I wanted to I wanted to be like, yeah, we share this experience, and like you're fucking trying to make it and I'm trying to make it. We're just doing the thing, and and it never really worked, and then and then like history happened and blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, it was like one of those things where it's like, man, I wish he could have been cooler because like I wanted to be friends with him.
Yeah. There are quite a few burned bridges there, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And
yeah, c'est la vie. Yeah. Yeah, man. So how did you end up there, or how did you end up working with them? Because I know you were working with Felicia, right? And you like had like a come to Jesus, and you're like, fuck this, and then you were like, I'm doing my own thing. And when she told me that part of your story, it like fit into the part that I knew about, where you were like like this kind of like tech genius working with the Symmetry guys.
Yeah.
I was like, how did you end up there?
Yeah. So I worked with Felicia 10 years ago at Funders Club, and that was an online VC firm. And honestly, I'm not super passionate about finance. That's not my jam. But the Funders Club founders, Boris and Alex, I was impressed by them, and they were both second timers. And I knew that I was going to be doing startups, and I wanted to get the chance to work with people that kind of know what they're doing and have done it before. And when they approached me, they were talking about a co-founder role, and I flat out told them that I am not passionate about finance, and I'm happy to be, build up an engineering team and be the first employee, but I'm not interested in doing it long term. And I said 2 years. That's what, and 2 years to the day, I emailed the founders. I'm like, hey, it's been 2 years. I built out the team. I built out the first product. It's time for me to move on to my next chapter. And that's basically what I've been doing ever since. A mixture of starting my own things or joining kind of efforts that are in their very beginning. I very much enjoy that phase of a company when it's kind of a 0 to 1 single digit number of people. I love
Yeah.
that energy. I think that once a company grows beyond that, when it hits 20 or 30 people, it just becomes much less fun for me. And this is true
Yeah.
even if it's my own company. I walked out of Whisper a few months ago, which was a hearing aid company, my latest chapter before this current one. And Whisper is now 50 or 60 employees, but I'm not as interested in being in an organization that's big. That's not where I
Now, did you
thrive.
start Whisper?
Uh, I did not start Whisper. Dwight, my co-founder, started it. I joined him. I was I guess I joined him when he was in the early prototyping stage. It was a great idea. It still is a great idea. And I was approached over the years by many founders, and a lot of them can talk the talk, but not all of them can walk the walk. And Dwight
Yeah.
was talking and walking, and he was finding the right people and making the right prototypes and finding the right advisors. And I decided to join him, despite having my own very early stage LED controller company. That's what I was doing 5 years ago. I decided to put that on the back burner, joined him for 3 years, brought the first version of the product to market, grew the company to over 50 employees, and then stepped back. I'm not as interested in scaling a large tech company and went back to my LED stuff, which I
Yeah.
guess is
Yeah.
one of the reasons we're talking now. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, your symmetry work was before Whisper, right?
Symmetry and actually the Tenere project was just as Whisper was starting. So I started working with Dwight in April of 2017, and that's also when Alex approached me to work on Tenere. And I decided, I'm not sure if it was wise or not, but I decided to do both projects at the same time. So I spent my weekends working on Tenere, and I spent my weekdays and my weekends working on Whisper.
Yeah.
Ended up going to Playa just for a few days before the burn started to help set up the tree, and then immediately headed back in the middle of the week to do a VC pitch the next day. That was
I mean,
pretty
honestly,
jarring, but
man, once it hits Wednesday on Playa, it's like, meh.
that's
The
when I
real
left.
magic is,
I
yeah,
left on
exactly.
Wednesday, and then Thursday morning I was pitching, uh, raising a seed round together with Dwight. So yeah, both
Yeah,
of
I mean,
those kind of happened at the same time.
yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of in that same boat where I'm like trying to double task it, and it's tricky. Like digital ambience is cruising, and
Mm-hmm.
we started this other thing that I'm working on in the beginning of the pandemic. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like digital ambience was kind of freezing up a little bit. And I was like, all right, well, I was kind of getting bored anyway. I'll just do this other thing. And that's rolling now. And now digital ambience is picking back up. And I'm in this position where I'm trying to like offload responsibility as fast as possible with DA.
Yep.
Find project managers and find other engineers and installers and techs, uh, people to sell. That's another huge thing, is like selling, just the act of selling like a new media art installation. It's a never ending job.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's like was my main thing, really.
Yep.
It was like selling and then programming. So trying to find ways to, do you actually know the building 180 women?
Um, I get their emails. I think I bet that's maybe from Paint the Void, right? That's kind of related to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Um,
I'm working with them, and I'm trying
yeah.
to essentially allow them to do the sales for DA.
Oh,
And it's
cool.
actually
Yeah.
working out pretty well. I'm
Yeah.
just like, here's our portfolio. We'll take less of a cut, but I don't have to do any selling. Go
Yeah,
forth.
totally. Nice. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Yeah,
And you're
when I started Whisper, I could not continue. My LED business at the time was not at a point where I could hand it off. So it was completely parked for 3 years and then defrosted as pandemic started, or
yeah.
actually mid-pandemic, which is kind of when I left Whisper as we launched our first product, and then picked up where I left off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
cool. I mean,
to get back
sometimes
to
it's
your
not.
question about symmetry and tenere, I was introduced to Alex, I guess, shortly after he fell through the roof. I don't know if you remember that.
I
The
do
first
remember
time
that.
I met him and talked about tenere, he was sitting in a hospital bed, and
Wow.
I came to the hospital and had a chat with him, and he casually asked me, well, if you were going to drive over 100,000 LEDs on this tree, how would you do it? And I kind of just rattled off kind of how I would design it and how I was thinking about it. And he said, well, great, why don't you do it? And my immediate response was, no, I can't. I'm starting a company now. But I let myself be persuaded into doing it. And yeah, I ended up doing it. And I'm very glad I did. It was a great project to be part of.
Yeah, man, that's one of the more iconic pieces of our time. Like as far as light art goes, that's part of that's part of the current landscape that makes up like what's possible. And that's really cool. It's yeah, absolutely. I just had a conversation on Tuesday with Luke Taylor from from Advotech,
Mm-hmm.
Advotech Lighting.
Yeah, the
They do the
Pixelites.
Yeah, we're like a longtime user of Pixelites. I love their hardware. It's fucking bulletproof, and their firmware is kind of like a Swiss Army knife for pixels,
Mm-hmm.
and it just really fits. It fills a void for us very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've known those guys forever, so I wanted to like get his. It was a super nerdy conversation, dude. Oh my god, we started like going into like
Yeah.
bit banging and just like the fucking nitty
Yeah, I love
gritty.
that stuff. That's my bread and butter right now. So totally
Yeah,
into it.
so you're going back to that now, and you're picking it up, and you're doing an LED controller.
Yeah, I honestly I don't really want to make LED controllers, but I feel like there's in my mind. I've been doing LED art for over a decade, and different flavors of it, whether it's wearable or large scale installs or smaller scale, like medium wall hanging stuff, and I feel like there are certain use cases that are just not covered by the existing controllers out there. I think
Tell me
that
about that.
so
Tell
the
me about
yeah
the
the
use
two use
cases.
cases that I was frustrated by were, one of them was just the kind of the throwaway super cheap wearable controller, which I just don't think exists today. It needs to be
Right.
as cheap as an Arduino and plug and play, and it has a USB on one side and a single channel output on the other side, and it just works. So that's kind of one thing that I'm working on.
Now,
And the
would that
second,
be so? In order to have that be like a viable
yeah.
thing, it would have to record and play back shows or patterns. Are
Uh,
you working on like a pattern engine as well?
so I am working on a pattern engine. I'm going to show you the board because I have them here. I all of my boards are named after plants of families of plants.
Ooh.
So this wearable controller, I'm aiming for like a $10 controller, $10 or less. It's called Moss. I can't seem to find any now. They're usually like scattered all over my desk. And yes, there is a pattern engine. That's this. Another thing that frustrates me about existing controllers is that they are mostly kind of dumb pixel repeaters.
Yeah.
There's a central
Yeah.
server that sends out pixels, and the controllers will multiplex them out. And they're very smart about it, and they support all the pixel types and all the network interfaces, and they'll take it over Ethernet or DMX or E13, and all the different protocols. And
Yeah.
I don't want to send pixel data over the network. I want to send high level configuration and events and triggers and a very small amount of traffic and then let the controllers themselves kind of interpret that and render that, and own the rendering code themselves, and not
So
have
that's a
their
very
frame rate depend on the network, basically.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool paradigm, and that's very similar to what Mark and Brian were doing with Luminous. I can't remember what the hell they're calling that thing now, but
Yeah, yeah,
that project is and Brian's, his like paradigm is very similar to that. But
yeah, 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 yeah.
like it's I think there is a niche for what you're describing that doesn't really exist, and Brian's thing's not here yet. Like I've been bugging him
Yeah,
for the past like 5 years.
I mean, I have been talking to Brian and Mark as well, and the reason I'm doing this is that theirs doesn't exist in the way that I could use it.
Yeah, me too.
And if it did exist, I would not have to do what I'm doing now.
Right.
And I'm very excited about making this thing and open sourcing it, and the way the trends that I've seen, and I have probably 2 decades of experience now in kind of security and web development and financial tech and a lot of other industries, and a lot of the trends that happen there. It's very obvious to me that they have to happen in our small niche art world as well. And in infrastructure world, we kind of went from having everyone had their own on-premise infrastructure to having virtual infrastructure, infrastructure as a service, and now we have kind of infrastructure as configuration as infrastructure. You have some JSON file or some ini file, and it describes something that unfolds into containers and virtual machines, and you don't have to host all those yourself. And that's how I'm thinking about this pattern engine as well. I want the pattern to be configuration, not code.
Right.
And that is the next pet peeve that I have with the existing controllers. And some of them are really amazing, like the Pixel Blaze, which Ben made, and Soulmate that Elliot made, and even the what was it called? The Julian's. I can't remember what it's called. Flow. I can't remember what it's called.
Let's go into those for a second, because
Yeah.
I'm barely familiar with those. I think that a lot of people would be interested to hear more about those. Like, explain
Totally.
like what are the
what's it called? I just want to give him credit. So I'm going to look up the name of his product, but
there's so many of them.
It'll come to me.
There's a lot of controllers out there.
I agree, and
some of
kind
them
of
are very
making another
niche.
controller is almost ridiculous. Like we definitely don't need another controller.
Well, I think a well-made controller is different. A well-made and easy to use, i.e., accessible controller.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think that the problems that I have with existing controllers, as mentioned, they're kind of dumb pixel repeaters, and they depend on some central server with, I don't know, LX or Resolume or all those programs that are pushing up pixels. Yeah. The second problem I have is that the ones that the Pixel Blaze and all these that I just mentioned, they are catering to coders. I think Pixel Blaze did an amazing job of reducing the barrier to entry, where it's all Wi-Fi based, and you put it in your art and you program it from your laptop, and it synchronizes over the air, and you're writing your patterns in JavaScript. You don't have to deal with C. But you still have to be a programmer, and you still open up the pattern, and you're staring at 20 lines of math. And I have been writing LED patterns for a decade now, and it's the last thing that I want to do when I'm trying to figure out a pattern. Kind of
so
go
as
into
a designer,
that math mindset. Yeah.
As a designer, that's why I like programs. Like, some of the programs out there, dude, are amazingly complex and full-featured pattern engines. And I don't think you could get that on a piece of firmware. Like, you look at Smode. It's a 3D engine. It's truly volumetric, and you can do some really advanced things with it. And that's why, I just like that paradigm.
Let me take you upstairs real quick.
I was going to say, we're going on a trip.
We're going on a trip. So I have been working on this program that gives you the full engine on an embedded platform. I don't know if you can see this. I have a glowy, magical glowy forest here.
Right.
These sculptures are
Sean
made
Stevens?
Yeah,
That looks like the stuff that Sean Stevens
yeah,
makes.
kind of. This is all resin sculptures by Eric Dunn,
Uh-huh. Oh, I know him.
and yeah, you've definitely seen his work, and he's posted his stuff, and these are all driven by controllers that I'm working on. And the pattern engine that I'm working on. And I wonder if I can share a screen with you just to show you what the editing interface will look like. But no coding was required to make those patterns. Oh, I didn't even show you the cool part.
Yeah, show me the interface. That's really that's I'm very curious about how
There's a
people interface and create patterns with
When I touch these plants, they're actually capacitive touch sensors. There's metal inside these tentacles, and you can see them glowing and talking to each other. So a big
yeah,
part of this interface is going to be integration with
interactivity.
sensors. I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, I kind of need to take a step back and give you the spiel before diving into these um, details. But basically, I want non-programmers to be able to use these things. I want them to be cheap and easy to use. I want them to integrate seamlessly with sensors. And I
Mhm.
want the composition to feel like kind of an if this, then that graph building experience where you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
respond to sensors and go to an excited state or an idle state and um, have
I've been
every
using Node-RED. Node-RED
yep
is a great
yeah
interface for doing if this then
yeah
that
that's
type flows.
one of the inspirations. Absolutely, Node-RED does it for IoT stuff. I want to do that for interactive art where LEDs are part of it. The audio is off there, but there's also a speaker in each one of those, and when you touch it, it plays a sound. um, Integrating microphones. I have all these digital microphones here on my desk, basically
Yeah.
creating the unified kind of input and output for interactive art. When this event happens, respond in that way, change these parameters in this way. Sure, if you want to tie this parameter to like a DMX slider or an OSC fader or all those things, no problem at all. Since our configuration here, our patterns are all configuration, so we know what these parameters are and these sliders and these faders. And yeah, that's kind of I feel like I'm not conveying this in a very organized manner, but that is a big part of what we're thinking of. And if I take
That's very cool,
another
man.
step
Yeah,
back,
I'd love to see the screen. Love to see the interface. I mean, I don't think
yeah,
you can screen share with this, but
yeah, I'll
at some
definitely
point,
share it with you. Absolutely.
yeah.
I realized, and this is a realization I had during pandemic, is that I don't really want to just make this tech in isolation. The only reason I'm
Yeah.
making it is that the existing stuff out there is not doing what I want it to do. Pixel Blaze even has a sensor board, but it's very hard to get multiple Pixel Blazes talking to each other. I know that there's Firestorm that helps with that, but um, none of these things are open source in a way that I can hack on them. None of them do what I want them to do. So here I am trying to rewrite the wheel that I really didn't want to rewrite, but actually very happy with the results that we have now.
That's
Um,
cool.
but
So
taking a step,
how
yeah,
far out are you from
I realized that I don't want to work. I don't want to be the tech company. I don't want to be like the advotech of of this interactive art. I want to make the interactive art itself.
yeah,
And that's when I pivoted from just working on the tech to working on an installation that showcases the tech. And that's what I'm
right.
doing now. So everything I'm making at the moment is in service of this installation. And that is an amazing thing, especially any time you're starting a company or starting some sort of venture, being able to focus on what you actually need and what people will actually use. This is the best way I can think of to make sure that I'm working on the right stuff, because we're using it in an installation in a few months, a team of many artists that are going to be using it and giving me immediate real-time feedback of, this interface is kind of hard to use, or I wish I could do this kind of pattern, or I wish I had this kind of sensor. And kind of
What's the venue that you're going to be
the venue is going to be gray area. I don't know how public this stuff is yet, so I'm not going to talk too much about that.
Okay, but
But
it's a venue you're going to do an art show
yes,
essentially.
Yes,
Cool,
it's gonna
man.
happen this summer. It's gonna ride the post pandemic excitement and kind of desire to see things and do things, which is already
Yeah,
happening. I saw the Oakland Zoo has the Glowfari happening right now, and it's
I
packed.
saw that. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's funny, man. There is going to be a renaissance
yeah,
as soon as the pandemic lifts and the quarantine
yeah,
kind of eases and people kind of get more comfortable with being around each other.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the Roaring Twenties, here
Yeah.
they come. That's very cool. So you're going to do this thing at a venue that you just named, so it's fine. And yeah, so but that's not the interactive art space that you're working on now. That's a whole different thing.
Well, that is the first step towards it. I think that
Yeah,
ultimately the end goal here is a permanent installation, super inspired by Meow Wolf. I'm sure that needs no introduction, but when I went to Meow Wolf for the first time 2 or 3 years ago, I was shocked that people were lining up around the block to see the kind of art that normally I would consider Burning Man art or psychedelic art or niche festival art, and people were lining up for it. And that was the first time that I had that aha moment of actually, if you make this thing and make it available to people, they will actually come and see it and enjoy it. And
let me ask you a
that's
question because there's actually been a number of immersive art spaces that have come and gone,
yeah,
and like I have my own theories about why certain ones succeed and fail.
yeah,
What do you think it is about Meow Wolf in particular that made that such success, whereas like some of the other ones that we've seen,
yeah.
not so much?
Um, I have many answers to that because I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I think that I think some conceptual things and some technical and mechanical things. So, on more on a meta level, I think that Meow Wolf was created by 200 artists, and their art is all in the same space and overlapping. And that means that even if some of it is not your cup of tea, definitely some of it will be. You will find some subset of those 200 artists will speak to you, and you will feel that the installation as a whole spoke to you. And,
Right.
I did not care for the narrative there at all. It's just not, when I go to that installation, the last thing I want to do is dive into some book that's telling me about a family. I just didn't care. A lot of people spent a lot of effort on that, and for some people, they love the narrative, and that's what they go there for. But there were so
See,
many other things that I loved.
in my opinion, it's that narrative that made it successful. It's like it needs, even if you're not like, okay, I don't want to do like the MMORPG thing, but like
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's the fact that there's some kind of thread and cohesive storyline that makes it an experience.
yeah.
Whereas it's not just a collection of art; it is like it's pieces of a story.
Well, I think that for me personally, consuming that art, even if it had no narrative, it would still be just as compelling.
Mm,
But I do think that the narrative, my interpretation of that is that the narrative gives a sense of depth. There's more to it than just what meets the eye, and you can just scratch the surface a bit and keep digging. And I think the narrative gives that feeling. And I think that if you figure out how to give that feeling in other ways, that feeling of there is something to discover here, there is depth. I really think that might serve the same purpose and keep it appealing. And here's why I think that. I have been to installations that had a narrative, and I just did not connect to it at all. And those installations failed. Didn't even last a year.
like which ones? Just
Um,
out of
I
curiosity.
don't really like naming names, especially when being critical of them. But there was an installation in San Francisco, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, uh, and it did not last a year. And it
See, I
had,
don't. I think that one in particular did not have a narrative. Right? There
well,
was no narrative to that
it
one. It
didn't
was
come
literally
across in the
just
art, but yeah, it felt like a
did it
collection of separate exhibits. A lot of them
exactly.
sponsored by a tech company that had a 3D camera that they were showing off, and
Right.
it didn't. It felt like, okay, you see everything once, and there's not. there's no depth. There's no, you can't keep diving into it. And it's
It's that
true
sense of
that,
depth.
yeah.
It's the
And
sense of depth that
and
like
for
that.
me, in the installation that we're working on in the summer, I don't, there might be some rich narrative, but there might not. And that sense of depth might end up being conveyed by feeling like there are secrets to discover and unlock just in kind of the interactivity. There's going to be a forest of plants of different species there, and realizing that they respond to you in certain ways, and if you do certain things they respond in one way, and if you do something else they respond in a different way, and maybe they have an effect on some other part of the installation. And um, yeah, you mentioned pulling threads before. You will absolutely be able to pull at threads and discover more and feel like there's more depth, and that you can't quite see everything in one go. um,
Now, do you
and I,
guys have like an art director that you're working with, or somebody who's kind of like got like a bird's eye view on the different pieces, or is it just kind of like, are you just like collecting artists essentially?
I'm serving in that role right now, for better or for worse. I do have a bird's eye view of what this will look like, and I'm trying not to say too much about it.
Yeah,
And the narrative that exists right now is a loose one, which, as kind of a low resolution one, where as we get closer to launching, we'll get more detailed and more elaborate. But it's maybe not the best approach or the best attitude, but I do believe that if you make a magical experience, if you create a space that really feels magical,
mm,
then people will care about the narrative. And
I agree with that
if you have
100%.
an amazing narrative but it doesn't feel magical, then no one's going to care what your narrative is. And that's
Yeah,
why
I
the focus is, okay, how do we make a space that is very magical?
right, and that's the key, right? Is figuring out that like what is magic, and like what does feel magical, and it's different for everybody, but there's very much like I feel like everybody can agree when something hits it on the head, and everybody can agree when something misses it. Everybody might have a different aesthetic,
Yeah,
but I think that like Meow Wolf hit it, and they hit it for the public, and it's a magical experience. Team Lab, team. I was just in Japan last year and a half ago. They hit it, and they did that with projection. And I'm actually not a huge fan of like immersive projection experiences, but they really did a good job. And
agree.
I think it was something no one had seen before, and it was very effective. Um,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
actually that experience in San Francisco that didn't do so well. I thought they relied a little too heavily on projection, and my favorite part of that whole thing was like the first room where it was kind of like this forest vibe, and I was just like, that's fucking cool. And then what happened?
Yeah,
You know what I
I
mean?
was very sad to discover that that initial room wasn't even part of the installation. It was the artist that owned the building before them left it
I
there for
know.
them. So
I know.
yeah, there's a lot of mixed feelings about that. About that feeling of, do you have the magic or not? There's something in my research of trying to nail that down. There's something that I learned, a small secret that I will share with you. When you ask people how was their experience, how did they enjoy it, people typically say that it was good, I liked it, and they'll say that
Right.
about any installation they went to. And the real way to figure out if that magic is there or not is to ask them if they would go back there, and that's when you
Right.
really learn how they feel about the place. And when you ask people if they would go back to, I don't know, some of these installations that exist today, often the response is, yeah, maybe if I have nothing better to do, or if I have a guest from out of town or something like that. And if you ask
Right.
people that have been to Meow Wolf if they would go back there, the answer is fuck yeah, absolutely. I can't
Yeah.
wait to go back there. And that difference is such a stark difference, especially compared to the first question of like, how did you like it? Where people are typically, yeah, it was good, I liked it,
Yeah.
in both cases. So that is how to know if you have the magic or not, but that's not how to create the magic. How to create the
Right.
magic, that's an entirely different question, and I have lots of thoughts about that too. I think the sense of depth is one of them. Um, I love the fact that Meow Wolf feels like one giant exhibit as opposed to a series of linear installations.
That's kind of what I'm getting at with the story element. It's not necessarily like a literal story, but it's like a visual narrative, right? And that visual narrative carries through from one thing to the next. So it's not like just a spattering of random art. It's like it's a visual story, and you're moving from one thing that slides seamlessly into the next thing, and it makes it feel like an immersive environment, right? That's
100%.
what it is. It's an
100%.
immersive environment.
Yep.
Like
And I think
when you
that's the
go out
big
into
one.
nature, when you're hiking, it's not like you move from one like chunk of nature to another. There's like it's a flow,
Yeah.
and it's a visual flow,
Yep.
and yeah,
And the
that's actually I
installation that
think
we're planning is absolutely going to have that property to it. There's going to
that's
be
very
one
cool.
line that you wait in, and hopefully, because it's going to be super busy and everyone's going to go there. And once you get in, um, you're in. There are no separate lines that you have to wait in. Kind of the same approach as Meow Wolf.
This is kind of like a free flow. People just like wander
Yeah,
around,
yeah,
or
exactly. Choose your own
cool.
adventure. Exactly.
So do you have the venue, and do you have the artists all picked out?
I have the venue. I have some of the artists. We're definitely going to need more. I have the overarching concept, the kind of loose narrative. I have a floor plan, which is also a low resolution floor plan that will get more detailed and fleshed out as we approach the public opening.
Yeah.
And yeah, and a lot of ideas. Not all of them will make it in, but yeah, super excited about it.
Can you talk about some of the artists that you've chosen?
Sure. Well, the sculptures that I showed you earlier, made by Eric Dunn. He's a resin sculptor from Sonoma.
Yeah, I
I
know
love
him.
his work. I've been following him for years. He's the first artist I approached when I was thinking of this concept, and I'm super grateful that he said yes.
Yeah.
Um,
He's a cool guy, man. He's like a very interesting guy.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's really great working with him. And then Keegan, who is X Symmetry.
I know Keegan.
Yeah, I've been following him for a while too, and I love the kind of the pragmatism that he has, having seen installations from concept to successful installation, and he kind of knows what it takes to make that happen.
Yeah.
And he has a great eye for the small subtleties that make the difference between something truly magical and not. And whether it's having the right frame rate and how to diffuse things, and not everyone has that eye, and he definitely
Yeah.
does. Um, I am talking to quite a few people in our various art and festival communities, various set designers, and people that I've worked with. I've worked on enough small, weird art pieces for these small niche festivals to kind of have a pool of people that it's not their full time job, but they also have done enough cool, weird art that I definitely want to showcase. And again, stepping back, I feel like the kind of art that I enjoy consuming is not really represented in the city in a way that is accessible to the public, in a way that's accessible to the 20 million tourists that come here in every non-pandemic year. A lot of stuff that makes it to Burning Man and to these festivals. Um, it's just when tourists come to San Francisco and they think of art, they go to the MoMA, or they go to Alcatraz, or they go to Pier 39, or they go to, I don't know, a lot of um, San Francisco landmarks. But the rich and vibrant psychedelic technical art community that thrives here is completely not represented in any of the
Right.
public art. And
Yeah.
sure, you can go and take a selfie in a swimming pool with whatever confetti. That's not the art that we consume. That's not the art that we make, but that is the art that tourists that come here, that's what they end up seeing. So I really want to change that. I really want make something that feels like the flavor of local stuff that we are aware of and that we make and that we consume.
You should talk to Sean, Steven, and Ashley. They do some really cool kinetics.
Yeah, Sustainable Magic. I've been in touch with them for years. They have
Yeah,
the flowers, the robotic flowers that open up. Uh,
yeah,
they were an inspiration for me when I just moved to San Francisco. I was deep in startup land, and Sean and Ashley, they were doing art full time, and they had their Kickstarter campaign for their van for doing workshops and kind of teaching people how to do all the cool stuff that they were doing. And in the same way that Meow Wolf gave me that sense of actually it's possible, you can do it. Sean and Ashley gave me that sense of, yeah, you can live in the Bay Area and you can actually make art and share it with people, and that's what you do.
yeah,
So I definitely appreciate that, and I'm grateful that they showed me the way.
yeah. I mean, what do you think about artists from outside the Bay? Like, through the course of doing this podcast
Mm-hmm.
and just traveling, one of my favorite things to do is travel internationally. And if you know an artist's work, and you're like, that artist is killing it. That's some amazing artwork. All you got to do is reach out and be like, "Hey, let's get a beer," and then
Yeah,
show up, and then
yeah,
they're happy. Like
yeah. They're
unless
thrilled.
they're assholes, they're happy to go kick it. And there's so many cool artists, man. Like over in Europe, they're like Play Modes, like Timo Lejeune.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of really, and it's a different style. It's a very different. Like I feel like European light art is it has like a different overarching feel to it,
yeah,
but it's cool, and like it would be fucking awesome to represent over here.
yeah.
Um,
Totally. Yeah,
a
I'll
lot
be
of it is
honest. I'm
very like,
not familiar with too many European light artists. Mostly the local scene here is what I'm familiar with. You mentioned
yeah.
Brian. I'm a fan of Brian. I feel like when it comes to
He's not
um,
local anymore.
yeah, he moved to
Denver.
Colorado.
Yeah.
But I feel when I look at his art, I feel like he gets it. And what I mean by that is that he's not creating a surface that he's projecting kind of a 2D screen onto or even a 3D screen onto. It really feels like his art is aware of its shape
Right.
in a sense that is more than just as a surface for projecting a YouTube clip onto. And
Sure.
and I like that a lot, and am definitely inspired by him. And I don't think it's a coincidence that his approach to his pattern engine is also driven by parameters, and he comes from the traditional lighting kind of DMX lighting world, and that's how he
No, he
thinks about his
doesn't.
pattern engine. Well,
He
he's
doesn't
catering
at
to that
all.
world with his product. He thinks of
No,
it.
he does. No, he like that's been a me and Brian worked together like 10 years ago, man. And
Oh yeah.
like I come from the DMX world. He
Mm-hmm.
comes from a programmatic world, very similar to where you come from, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like. And even now, like his product is able to receive ArtNet commands.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like his pattern engine has a bunch of handles that I can control via ArtNet.
Yep.
So I can turn up the amplitude or change the hue or I can control handles and parameters via DMX and ArtNet, but that's only because through our collaborations I was like, homie, this is like I need this. And he's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I make this. And I'm like, well, let's figure out a way to make them work.
Yeah, I guess I saw it when it was in that state already, so I thought that that's where he came from, and it's cool
No,
to know
no.
that influence is from you. That's super cool. But I am the engine that I'm working on now absolutely has that as well built into its very fabric, where
Yeah.
every parameter is controllable by from the outside, whether it's ArtNet or MIDI or OSC
OSC
or
or
whatever.
whatever. Yeah.
Um, and I really like that approach, and it's kind of moving away from the let's create a huge surface and just project on it, which I think that's like the LED lab approach, and the Pix lights are very often used for things like that. And I
LED.
think they do
Yeah,
it.
I'm not a big. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say shit.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah,
yeah.
it's. I agree with you 100%. I think that the best LED canvases, right, are the ones that treat the canvas not as a video screen, but
Exactly,
as like a sculptural element, and you
exactly.
create art algorithmically, like the patterns are created algorithmically. That's why I like Smode, man. I love Smode. I
Yeah,
love, even like Madrix was how I got started with that. And Madrix has like generators, and
hmm
essentially you're able to use those generators to create yeah, generative patterns to run across your canvas. And
hmm
yeah, Madrix is very, very linear. It's very like grid, and that's inevitably why we moved away from it. But yeah, generative patterns, man.
yeah. I
Whether
haven't
that's
used
running on.
Mode to be completely honest, but that my approach is definitely one of like algorithmic composition, and not you're not going to be recording some movie and then playing it back. That's not how I think about
Yeah,
LED art.
absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, it's funny, man. I had a long conversation with Mark Slee, and we were talking about that, and his pattern engine, which is
Yeah,
also like I've never
LX.
used
Yeah,
it, but I'm fascinated by it, and I really would like to. It's just yeah, it's not quite there for us to use in our projects, but
yeah. LX is amazing. Mark is a DJ, and I think that his approach towards LED kind of pattern creation is very much influenced by being a musician and a music creator. And
it's all LFOs.
it's all
It's all
LFOs, and I definitely borrowed that as well from my pattern engine.
yeah.
And it's LFOs, and it's connecting to sensors, and it's the dragging a fader to a parameter is very similar to how you would do it in Ableton and in other DJ software. And it makes a lot of sense that when a DJ software engineer designs a pattern engine, that's what it looks like. I think that it still is in the paradigm of having a central server pushing pixels out, and it
Yeah,
really
it
depends on
is.
having a good mapping, a kind of a 3D model of what your art looks like. Because
Yeah.
LX is basically an amazing 3D renderer that then gets mapped onto the 3D structure.
So tell me how your engine deals with mapping, because that's honestly that consumes most of my like
Yeah,
with digital ambience. Like mapping is that's where my head is. It's like
totally.
taking physical objects, getting that data into software, and then mapping light patterns onto
Yeah.
those forms. And that's an art
So
form that's a skill set in and of itself, man.
yeah,
It's
I agree.
complicated.
I agree. I think that yeah, if you happen to build your sculpture in a way that includes a 3D model, then you can often kind of export that 3D data and turn it into an LED mapping. It's time consuming. It's very manual. It depends on having a good, when designing the 3D structure, kind of having an understanding of the mapping challenges. There are algorithmic ways of doing it. I think Kyle from Symmetry, or even before Symmetry, he wrote something that uses OpenCV and webcams and does auto mapping by playing known colors to known pixels and tracking their position and triangulating it and basically automating that
See,
process.
Christopher Sharp did that with LED Lab, and I gotta tell you, it doesn't like it works fine for a flat screen, but that's
It's
about it.
finicky, and it's not
Yeah,
it's a really hard problem. And what I decided to do is to constrain the problem, and I only do 2D mapping, but I do 2D mapping at a time. And what I mean by that is that you can basically layer multiple layers of 2D mapping that all together create this rich 3D world. And maybe this is more relevant to the installation that I'm making now, which is this magical forest that has hundreds of individual controllers and sculptures. But the idea is that there's a 2D mapping where every sculpture knows its position in X and Y. But then for each sculpture, there's another 2D mapping where it knows in a different set of two dimensions, kind of where its orientation is up or down or left or right. And the idea is that you can compose a complex scene where each individual component is a 2D surface that can be, it can be from top down, or it can be from the front, or it can be from the side. It doesn't really matter. But creating those 2D mappings as opposed to 3D is actually much easier. You can take a
Yeah.
picture of your art, and then on top of that overlay a simple, like a simple vector editor and splines and simple curves, and kind of fit them and create a very accurate 2D mapping by just dragging a few things. None of that webcam stuff, none of that OpenCV stuff. It's still manual. You have the reference picture that you took of the actual art to help you get the proportions right. You just say, this is, strip number 3, and it's got 80 pixels in it, and that's it. You're done. It's mapped.
Yeah.
And
Everybody has a different approach to mapping.
yeah,
And I've used them all, man. Like I've gone through all of them. And it's funny because now we'll take, like, for simple projects, we'll take one product that does a great job with mapping, and we'll take that map and we'll export it as a CSV, and we'll import it into another product that has
yeah,
a great generative engine.
yep,
And then we'll
yep,
take that sometimes and we'll load it into another program that does 3D.
yep,
Right. So it's like, it's really about these complex workflows. But
yeah.
yeah. So in your installation, is the Shlomo mapping system the only mapping system that's allowed, or are you going to have artists that do their own? Because most artists have their own workflow. Like, to
Yeah,
be honest, like most artists do.
I think that a big part of what we're doing is actually drastically reducing the barrier to entry of what it means to be an artist that makes interactive LED art. And I think
Mm,
that the fact that today there's a certain technical prowess that's required, whether it's coding, Pixel Blaze wants you to create mapping in JavaScript, and or manually editing a lot of configuration files. I really want to create a tool that will let non-programmers do this magic that was kind of locked up in this club of programmers and highly technical people, and open it up
yeah.
to everyone. So when I'm thinking of the artists that are going to be working on this, they don't have existing workflows because none of this was available to them. These are kind of interaction designers and visual artists and set designers and people that have an amazing aesthetic, but they don't have the tools to express that aesthetic using all of this technology. And I'm going to give them this tool, which doesn't fully exist yet, so no one has a
Yeah.
workflow for it. And I'm going to
Right.
say, you have all of these input devices and all of these output devices, and you can respond to these events, and you can layer these patterns and change their parameters and tie them to sensors. Let's make something amazing. What are you missing for this to really feel like what you want it to feel? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely another artist, local artist that I like a lot is Rich DDT. I think he
Yeah. I
makes
just did a
amazing.
podcast with him.
Yeah, he also gets it in a very deep level, and his kind of multi-sensory stuff where he combines LEDs with sound and
Yeah.
tactile and low latency on everything, and he gets it definitely. And I'm excited to potentially work with him on this as well. And sure, a lot of artists, as you said, have existing workflows, but I'm hoping to present a larger collection of artists with a huge playground and a rich set of tools, and kind of
Yeah.
see what they can come up with. And it's going to be less about, make whatever you want and hope that we can jam it into this and that it fits. It's going to be a lot more like, this is the space. It's this alien botanical garden that has all of
It's
these
such a cool
input and
concept,
output
man.
devices. Yeah. And
Yeah.
let's, how do we compose them in a way that's awesome visually? And how do we add interactions that feel like invite people to figure out how they work and solve environmental puzzles? And
Right.
that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
See, it's funny, man. Like, I'm really into volumetrics, and like when you're describing your space, if I was going to do a piece, I would want to do something with volumetrics. There's a product that we've developed over years and years of iterating, which is essentially like a very delicate pixel strand. It's durable, but it's very, like, visually delicate,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows you to create a
Point cloud
like a pic
almost.
like Yeah, like a three-dimensional pixel array.
Yep.
And then with, I mean, yeah, I mean, we're able to map patterns in 3 dimensions. So we can take a 3D model and map that in. And I'm like envisioning like,
Yeah.
like when you're in like a, like Avatar, like the jungle, they've got those like glowing vines. It's
That
like
is
that's what I
absolutely
would
the
want to do.
inspiration for this installation.
Yeah, that's what I
The
would want to
the
do. I
pitch
would want
deck
to make like a,
has a snapshot of Avatar on it of Pandora. Um,
yeah.
and
What do you do about volumetrics?
so LX, that's Mark Slee's software. That's
Yeah.
how it works in volumetrics. It is a 3D volumetric pattern engine.
So you are
And
using other people's software.
this installation, we're thinking about it as having kind of two modes. It has the exploration mode and it has the
Mhm.
event mode. In the
Right.
event mode, we're building a DJ booth right into it, and it's going to have a dance floor as part of it. And in this mode, yes, it's going to be playing volumetric patterns.
What
Um,
about interactive volumetric patterns?
Potentially,
Because for example, with Smode, you can take a 3D model and you can have a generative pattern that is a generative 3D pattern,
yeah,
and then you can affect that pattern with input. So you can take the input from sensors, for example, and modulate your 3D generative pattern that's expressing on like whatever,
yeah, music
and
or
you can do that.
sensor or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, man. And that's like, I don't know. I see that like volumetrics is like this whole other potential arena where you could incorporate
yeah,
uh, sensor data, right? And
yeah,
like real
absolutely.
time feedback.
I don't see it as a separate problem. I think that it's basically how good is your mapping. That's all it is.
Yeah,
And
right.
can the pattern engine generate 3D patterns instead of 2D patterns? It absolutely can. Honestly,
Yeah.
I would just use LX at that point because LX has solved that problem. And yes, this installation will definitely combine a lot of different tech. LX is one of them. I'm talking to Mark Slee about it, and I'm excited about. The fact that every plant knows its location in the
Mm,
3D world and kind of knows what kind of plant it is and what kind of shape it is means that LX can query it programmatically and plot them in a 3D space and kind of do volumetric stuff without manually mapping things. And it won't be as accurate as if you did painstakingly map each pixel. But even if you have just kind of a 2D mapping of each plant and you have an effect that ripples from one point in the center outwards, and each plant in turn lights up and does some effect, and is very clearly done in sequence, and there's some spatial awareness here. Even though each plant, maybe when it gets triggered, it will do some pulse upwards or some glow or some other effect. But at a macro level, yes, there's spatial awareness here. There is this volumetric feeling, and something that I did not mention yet, except briefly when I said unity earlier, is that the edges of this world are all going to be virtual world and unity that continues the physical world. Right?
yeah.
If you touch
So
a physical
projection.
sculpture, it will ripple to its neighbors, and when it reaches the projection boundary, it will keep rippling into the virtual world.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you're doing all that in Unity. Unity is such a great environment. I love Unity.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
actually done a lot more in the Unreal Engine, but like Unity's so cool. Like
yeah.
it's a very, very cool environment.
Yep, yep. I agree. The graph editing in Unity is also an inspiration for the editor that I'm working on for my pattern engine. It's called Canopy, by the way. Um,
Cool. So how can I play with your
Yeah, I
your
just have to.
pattern engine,
I'll give
your
you some
device?
controllers and let you play with it. It's not quite ready for prime time, and I think one of the side effects of working on this installation now instead of just focusing on the tech is that the tech is going to be less polished, right? Because I'm focusing on just the mandatory functionality that we need to make this installation happen, which means that it's not going to be as pretty, and we're not going to do FCC certification yet, and we're not going to write the user manual, and all of these extra steps that we have to take for productizing it. We're
Yeah.
not going to do them yet. So I will share it with you, and it's going to be rough, but you will be able to edit these patterns without writing a single line of code. And you'll be able to layer them and mix them and change their parameters and expose them to ArtNet if you want, or to OSC or to anything else.
I think
And
that's what like from my perspective, it would be like I've always been fascinated about that paradigm of LED controller, and I've always seen so much potential working with Brian, where it's like, I get it, man. Like, I understand the draw of a distributed pattern engine. I want that capability. Can you like give me some hardware to play with? Because I would love to be a collaborator in the development of that kind of thing. And then like, dude, there's an entire like my mindset of working with LEDs represents an entire like section of the light art market, right? And if you're trying to market this thing as a tool, there is an army of people of various skill levels, but who come at light art creation from this mindset, from the mindset of a show production
Yeah.
mindset, right? It's
Yeah.
like
That's
I
exactly it.
grew up on the stage. That's how like I learned about lighting,
Yeah.
LEDs,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and mapping. And I think that there's a lot of potential to use the tool that you're designing through that paradigm. And it would be so fucking cool to work as like a beta tester, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
use that software and that product in some of our upcoming projects and just give you feedback. Like, hey, this is fucking awesome, but it
I would
broke
love that.
here. Or maybe like if you included this tweak, it would be infinitely more,
Yeah.
useful in this situation.
Absolutely. That would be amazing. I would love that feedback, and I would just love to share it with you. And it's also important for me that it works on any of the standard kind of maker controllers out there. This will work on an
Yeah.
Arduino, and it will work on whatever you end up using. My dream is that non-programmers will be able to use this editor and edit their pattern, kind of export it to a JSON file or an INI file, just paste that into their Arduino, and that's it. It renders the exact pattern
Right.
that they configured. Patterns is
So this is
configuration.
cross-platform. You're not tied to a certain hardware platform. This is like,
I'm
that's cool. That's definitely the way to do it.
yeah,
It's also going to make it much more difficult, I think, to get a consistent experience, in that like it'll be harder for you to control for things like frame rate when you've got people trying to run this on like an Arduino Uno or whatever the fuck, like the Arduino Mini, and or
yeah.
or like whatever, and they're like, my shit's all chunky. It's like, well,
Yeah, it's pretty easy to predict how fast it will run and how much memory it will consume in the editor itself. A lot of, often the pixels that we all use, the 3-wire pixels, they have a known rate of 800 kilobits per second, which means that how many pixels you can render in a second, in a frame in a second. And if someone is creating a pattern that is 1,000 pixels long, you know that the frame rate is going to suck. And you're like, hey,
here's the
if you,
thing though. It's like the range of available pixels has blossomed, and now like we haven't used the 28 family in years because the
Mhm.
PWM rate for those pixels is so low that doing things with great dynamic range, like where you have to fade down into like very dim brightness levels,
Mhm.
results in some really nasty chunking.
Yep,
And
yep, yep.
because of that, we've migrated to different pixel types, and like we probably have like a toolbox of like a dozen different pixel types that we use for different scenarios, depending on like, oh, we need a 24-volt system. We're going to use this pixel type because we can drive it at 12-volt, which means we can have a 3 LED pixel
Yep.
that runs at 24 volts, or we want 16-bit color and a gamma correction, and we use a different pixel for that. And then we've got manufacturer partners in Shenzhen who can produce custom form factors for us, like on spec at low volume. And so
That's
like
pretty great. Yeah.
having the ability to talk to those pixel types,
Mhm.
you should plan for that, man. Like, cause
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
one of the main factors in us in choosing an LED controller is like, can it talk to our fucking basket of pixels?
Absolutely. And the way I'm thinking about this is, if we dive into the engineering for a second, there
No,
is
let's go
a
there.
yeah,
Let's
there's
go
a separation of concerns between the engine that renders the pixels, sorry, that generates the patterns into memory, and then the other system that takes those pixels from memory and pushes them out to the actual hardware, to the actual
Sure.
physical pixels. Canopy cares mostly about the first part.
Is that the name
Canopy,
of your product?
yeah. So specifically the pattern engine. Canopy will take the configuration, the JSON file, and give you an array of RGB values.
Right.
That's all it does. Taking that array of RGB values and pushing it out to pixels, that's a separate thing. Right now, we're using fast LED. You can use the Adafruit libraries. You can use anything you want that will take, send it over the network to Pixlite, send it.
So is Fast LED still being developed? I don't want to segue, but just that
Yeah,
what's his name? He passed away.
Daniel. Yeah, that was very
Yeah,
sad.
Daniel Garcia.
That was tragic. It is still developed. His kind of partner in Fast LEDness, Mark, is still actively working on it, as well as a bunch of contributors from the community. I think someone named Sam is actively working on it as well. I mean, I think it is still very actively maintained. It still has
It's a
thousands
beautiful
of
piece of
downloads a
software.
day. It has an active Reddit community,
Yep.
and like I am relying on it heavily for a lot of Canopy stuff. So I mentioned that fast LED is what drives the pixels to the actual hardware, but I think that the design of fast LED is brilliant, and the way that Mark and Daniel thought about kind of the building blocks that they provide there are I wrap them with a UI almost one to one in terms
Right.
of the math functions and the layering and the blending and the palettes. And I really think that they did a great job there. And my Canopy is basically exposing fast LED to non-programmers. That's how I think
Right.
about it.
That's
And
brilliant.
yeah, it's definitely would not be possible, or not nearly as possible, without fast LED. I'm very grateful for that library, and I think a big reason for me making Canopy and open sourcing it and sharing it with the maker community is kind of giving back after having used fast LED for so many years and benefiting from that community. Tree of Tenere uses fast LED for its guts for all the rendering.
Right. So is your controller gonna? I'm curious how your controller will scale to large installations with
Yeah.
with hundreds of thousands of pixels. Is it the same kind of engine that was used on the tree, or is it
The
some?
tree didn't have its own engine. The tree had the paradigm of a central computer that was pushing
Yeah,
pixels
yeah,
out. That was LX, and it was pushing them over OPC.
yeah.
The controller just took the OPC stream and paralleled out to eight strips per controller.
Very few products use that that protocol. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, it's made locally. It's made by Ping, I think. Right, he's
Yeah, I know
the
Ping.
local artist that made it. Um,
Yeah,
it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's a very thin, lightweight protocol. It's written by someone competent in C, and it's very obvious. Um, I don't like bad mouthing, but I'm about to badmouth. Uh,
let's do it, dude.
OSC, OSC, not OPC. OSC is kind of the replacement for MIDI, and what a lot of people have embraced as the way to control faders. It's, I think, a disaster.
Well, that's not a pixel protocol.
It's not. You're right. It's a fader
That's not
protocol.
a that's different.
Uh,
That's totally different. OSC
yeah,
is fine for what it is, man.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it,
yeah.
I like OSC because what are the fucking alternatives? Like, what am I going to do other than OSC? I'm going to use like DMX or ArtNet. I mean,
I
yeah,
agree that
maybe
it
I was going to
serves
use
its
like,
purpose. I just mean in terms of the implementation. When me as a programmer, when I look at it, it there's some choices there that were made by by if the person that designed OPC was also the one that designed OSC, it would look very different. That's what I'm going to
sure,
say. So all of this is to say that OSC is simple and elegant. It does what it's supposed to. Is lightweight. It can be implemented in 10 lines of C, which is delightful.
mm.
That's why I chose it. It's such a low overhead and
So
easy
you use
to.
OPC?
I used it for Tenere. It was super easy to integrate. And Mark Slee on the LX side, he's like, "Oh, we don't support that now, but here, hold my beer. And he did it in half a day because it's that kind of, it is such a
Yeah, yeah,
lightweight protocol with a tiny
right.
header that just here's your channel, here's your data, do it.
Man, I should talk to Luke at Advotech,
Yeah.
and I should talk to the makers of the software platforms that we use as our canvases,
Yeah.
and I should be like, homies, fucking implement this, do it, just
Yeah.
do it.
And I understand why they're not doing it. And to your question of why that's not the one that's used, the professional people that are doing the professional lighting, they come, like you said, from the DMX world. So they're going to use the DMX over Ethernet, which is taking
Well, I
this
mean,
really shitty protocol that was made for DMX cables and is limited to like 512, single.
gradations. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It is
totally.
ridiculously.
It's actually 256, not
Yeah,
512.
sure, depends. Yeah, exactly. And it was made for when you had DMX cables and that hardware. And here we are today, decades later, still using that protocol, but we wrapped it with a few layers to work over Ethernet. And OPC is kind of like, hey, we're not tethered to this old DMX stuff. Let's
Right.
design it like we would if we had Ethernet, and that you end up with something so much simpler. And that's why I used it. And I forgot to mention, I also made a DMX controller, and it has DMX output for controlling the like the stage lights, the par lights. I want my pattern engine to be able to control those as well, so it will take the protocol and just spit out DMX.
Well, here's the thing, man. Like your device, in order to succeed commercially, will have to speak ArtNet and DMX.
Yeah.
However, I agree with you 100%. It is an obsolete protocol.
Yep.
It is just the one that, well, it's not obsolete. It is an antiquated protocol,
Yep.
but it is the one that is literally spoken by all devices on the market now.
Yep.
So in order for your product to be relevant, it needs to speak those protocols.
Yeah.
But I think that you're very smart for implementing protocols that are more forward thinking and better written. And I, for one, cannot wait until the tools that I'm using speak a more forward thinking protocol. Like it's bullshit.
Yeah, and obviously we will support ArtNet. That's not a problem. It's
Yeah,
it's literally is checking another like marketing bullet item of like, yes, we support this too. It's not a problem. There are existing libraries for all of these things.
It's more than marketing though, man, because the same way that you want to empower non-programmers to use your platform, there is an army of artists out there that came up through that technology tree, that branch of the technology tree, who are stuck in that paradigm because that's the only tools that they've had access to. And by speaking these protocols, it's essentially like going to a country and speaking that language. All of a sudden, you allow these other artists to have access to the ideas that you're trying to spread.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. I think that I agree 100%. It's obviously more than just marketing, and obviously a lot of people are using it. I think that my approach towards controllers is not, at the moment at least, it's not make the best controller out there, but rather make the controller that does what the existing ones don't. And the existing controllers do not do pattern as configuration. So I'm doing that. They do not do deep sensor integration. They do not do like talking to each other in an IoT mesh way, which is what our installation is going to do. I think that on the hardware side, we're also innovating with things. We have, I'm calling it like the smart output. Controllers today are not super resilient. Some of them have fuses that will blow out and you can replace. I think Pixlite has car fuses in it. I'm doing everything digital. So I'm going to have smart side switches, smart high side switches that can detect shorts, and they can detect, measure the current and detect if an LED dies and protect against reverse polarity and just make them completely bulletproof in that sense. And when you do have a short, it's not going to blow a fuse that you have to manually open some box and replace. It's just going to shut down in software, tell you about it, let you fix the LED thing, and then keep working as if nothing happened.
That's
beyond me why existing controllers don't do that. It's kind of similar to ArtNet. It's the old way of doing it is with this automotive fuse. Let's do the new way, which is
Right.
with fancier
So current
parts.
sensing is trickier than that though, because if you look at how would you implement current sensing in a way that accounts for strings of LED pixels drawing different amounts of current depending on temperature, different diodes drawing different amounts of current, different manufacturers manufacturing strip in different ways that draw different amounts of current. So current sensing is more complicated than you're making it out to sound. And I was talking to Luke about this the other day, where it's like you can have a variety of configurations of strip.
Yep.
I'm not talking about like the commercially like available 2812 bullshit from Amazon, right? I'm talking about like if you're actually trying to make current sensing work in a universal way, I don't see how you would do that.
Should I reveal my secret sauce? Because I already implemented this. It works.
No. I'm very curious, man, because like
Yeah.
it is the future, and like Luke's doing that on his Mark III, and like they're eliminating fuses, like blah blah blah. But
So
they
here's
aren't
how I
changing
do
the
it.
fund.
And Luke,
Yeah,
if you're listening to this, go for it. I am. It's not going to be. It will be current sensing all the time, but the idea is that when you power it on, or when you go into a diagnostic mode, it knows how to incrementally light up the LEDs one at a time on full brightness white and measure the
right.
draw after each one. And that gives you two
So
things. One,
it calibrates
exactly. It
automatically.
counts how many
There you go.
LEDs you have, and it
Right.
saves that calibration. And then in the future, you power up the controller. It does a quick diagnostic test of lighting them all up, measuring that against the calibrated value. You immediately
Yeah.
know if you have a short or if you have a broken pixel. You also know how many LEDs you have because it counted them automatically during the calibration step. And it's easy enough. The current sensing is accurate enough where one LED at whatever voltage it's consuming, when it's full white, it's between zero 0.3 and 0.6 watts. Depends on the brand, depends on the pixel, depends on whatever. That is enough to be able to detect it. Even if not at a resolution of one LED, you can detect it at a resolution of 2 or 3 or 4 LEDs. That's still good enough for this purpose.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say there is some variation due to temperature change when the pixels heat up. But I think that's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant way to handle it, man. And honestly, I wouldn't worry about Luke. Like he's developing a fundamentally different product. What you're developing,
I'm not
you're developing a canvas with a piece of hardware attached. And what he's developing is just an LED controller. He has no interest. He's not an artist, man. Like he's a fucking engineer. And that's what they're focused on. They're focused on making the best LED portal pass through to
the
connect
best pixel pusher replacement.
Yeah, exactly. Although Pixel Pusher's another. I should talk to fucking Jazz or not Jazz, right?
Yeah, Jazz.
Yeah, Jazz. I should get her on this podcast. I haven't talked to her in a million years, man. She's such a funny woman. I love that girl. We worked with her before. We worked with her on a project. Yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, Pixel Pusher set the tone. I think that the controllers for Tenere, basically, the attitude was Pixel Pusher costs $100. We can make this with a bill of materials of $8. Let's just do that. Right. And then we made that. We made a few hundred of them, and and it was in the form factor that we wanted, and the connectors that we wanted, and the power. It uses the same Anderson power poles that Pixel Pusher used, but
power poles are great. Not for outdoors, but they're great for indoor use.
Yeah, I kind of stopped using them. I started using the the XT06s, XT09s.
Yeah, we don't use power poles for almost any installations unless it's indoor, just because they're press fit, and it's like a press fit is like ripe for just unintentionally disconnecting.
Yeah, the tree that's at Area 15 right now, which kind of blatantly copied the Tree of Tenere controller. As a result, it's using power poles just because.
Right. Man, so Matthew Weigel is an engineer that we work with frequently. He's one of the engineers who does the installation for the trees, and he's told me like he's man, like part of me, like as an engineer, I want to create things that will last. Do you know what I mean? Things that will last for years. And when I see, things that have been designed that fall apart quickly and are not engineered with longevity and durability in mind, it hurts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like what he's told me about the current trees, it's just like it makes me cringe, man. It's like somebody taking fingers down a chalkboard. I'm like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Like there's one in Oslo right now that's just like, I mean, who knows how much they spent on that shit? It just falls apart. It's falling apart, and there's no one left. There's no one left to maintain it. It's like, what do they do? You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
thing.
Do you know which parts are failing? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's the leaves. It's the internals. It's the leaves themselves. The pixels inside the leaves. To be fair though, dude, like making something that will survive in Oslo, we're doing an installation in the British Virgin Islands, and that's like corrosive salty air, that's like direct sunlight, that's outdoor rain and moisture. It's the challenge is the waterproofing. The challenge is not like, oh, can you
Totally,
make
totally,
like,
totally.
you know what I mean? The challenge is like, can you make this thing that's not going to survive at Burning Man for a week,
Yeah.
but that's going to survive on the beach for 5 fucking years? That is a
Yeah.
much greater challenge.
Yeah, I mean, to their credit, I think that as someone who has built many companies and tech teams at this point, I have a very strong belief that you do it properly the third time. It's impossible
Mm,
to do it properly the first time, and I think that
I'll agree with
um,
that.
the Oslo tree is still kind of the same tech basically as the Tree of Tenere, the Burning Man one.
Yeah.
It was never made to last. I actually don't know. I don't. They may have had a second iteration on the leaves. I think it just takes many iterations to get it right. And
Yeah.
the fact
No,
that
I
no one
agree
is
with you.
left at Symmetry to maintain it, that's just unfortunate. But
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully the next iterations of those trees will do a bit better.
Yeah, I'm sure they will, man. It's too good of an idea not to. And I'm sure that there will be more customers and more people and like, and blah, blah, blah. Um, but yeah, there's something to be said for like, I feel like the most successful light art installations are those that take a page from nature. Like in the art that we do, we always try to bring it back to nature and natural forms, even if it's not like directly mimic like a plant. It's like all of the things that we do are like they're it's like parametric generated architecture, right? Like what we do really is we accent architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and we accent like elements of architecture with light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you've got sculptural features in a building that that form the structure that we light, and that's really what that's what DA is all about. And
Yeah,
it's like we work very closely with artists, architects who are very into parametric architecture,
totally.
generating things through algorithms, and that becomes like the shape of the building and the shape of the facade, and
Yeah, I love
it's
that stuff.
cool. Yeah, me too,
It's a
man. Me
big,
too.
big guideline for what we're doing with our installation, which is
I can
called
tell.
Numina, by the way. I think that we have a few guidelines. One of them is no rainbows.
Don't tell Brian that.
I know. He has just fucking rainbows mode, but
Oh,
yeah,
it's so good, man. It's so good. It's like JFR. We always gave him shit for that. It's like, homie, this is like the fucking iMac from 2003. Like why are you so
I
obsessed with
think he's
rainbows?
kind of aware of it. It is,
Oh, he
you
is.
know,
It's tongue
yeah,
in cheek at this point.
totally, totally. So no
Yeah.
rainbows, no visible tech, no
Yeah,
visible
yeah.
LEDs, no visible
Of
wires,
course.
no hotspot, none of that. No frame rate is stuttering, and then finally everything looks organic. Everything looks like it is biology, even if it's not the biology that we have here in our world. It still feels like a biology that evolved somewhere under some set of conditions.
Yeah.
And that, in terms of, you asked about the art director or the creative director, that is the creative direction that we're working with.
That's a great.
It's
It's
a
a
bit
great
it's a
North
bit more
Star, man.
specific than that, but that if any artist that we end up working with is going to have to agree to those three pillars of what this installation is going to look like.
So let me ask you a question. Do you have a chipset, an LED chipset that you're guiding your artists to use? Because let me tell you, man, that makes almost as much of a difference as the way you drive your pixel is the type of pixel you're driving. And like,
100%.
yeah,
So we are all the you mentioned that the WS family has a PWM rate issue. I think the
fuck
old
that family.
ones had, yeah,
Fuck
they
that
were like
family.
400 hertz PWM, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The APAs, the 4-wire ones, they have 20 kilohertz PWM, which is overkill. I think
So
anything
listen,
over 2,000 or 3,000 hertz is fine for us.
yeah.
That's kind of
So
the rule of thumb.
I'm very very like focused on chipset. I would love to fucking nerd out with you at some point
Totally, totally.
if you want on
Yeah,
like the things that I've discovered about the various chipsets because
I
we've
would
gone
love
through
that.
them
Yeah.
all, man. And like APA, it was a cool idea. The company is bullshit. Like APA as a company has screwed us over, and they're essentially there's been a clone of the APA, the 9822,
Yep.
which is actually yeah, which is
We're
actually
using SKs for everything. SK, the
yeah,
9822, the 6822s.
yep.
I think that I'm fascinated by the WS 2815s, which are part of the family that you dislike, but the features that they have, which is the redundant data line and the 12-volt bus, make them very compelling for what we're doing now. I think ultimately we're going to end up with a mix of chipsets. It's going to be
Yeah, of
impossible to do
course.
it all with one. I love the 9822s. I love the 2815s, and I love chipsets that have warm white pixels in them in addition to the RGB. That makes a
So
huge difference.
RGBW is not available in a 12-volt form factor, unfortunately.
Yep.
We do use the 6812 for our RGBW pixel, which is a 5-volt.
Yep.
You should look at the 8208, which is like the 2815. However, 2815s have heat problems, right? And they've been plagued by overheating issues, whereas the 8208 does not. I'll send you the spec sheet.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a native RGB 12-volt pixel.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but I Google it and it takes me to Advitech, so they know what they're doing.
Well, they support it. Actually, we were the ones who were like, I was like, Luke, you got. I sent him a sample. I'm like, dude, fucking integrate this. we're using this in a
Yeah,
project. We need it.
that's good to know. I didn't realize that the 15s had a heat problem. It's it makes sense if they're individually stepping down the 12-volt for each LED, which is
Yeah,
natively
they
a
are.
5-volt part, but or whatever it
They're
is.
using a. They're using a. It's a current driven. It's like it's constant voltage, but internal to the diode, it's current driven. And that's how they do it, and
Yeah, it just
that's how they
burns off
don't
a lot.
lose like all efficiency. And maybe they fixed it, man. The 2815 just traditionally was plagued by overheating issues, and it was a real thing. And like when we started using the 12-volt pixels, it was just like we tried them all, and we like burned out a bunch of 2815s. We're like, fuck that, I'm going over
Yeah,
here.
move on to a different one. Totally.
Yeah,
Totally. I know that the some there are if you don't solder them correctly, right? You have to kind of demoisturize them before putting them in a reflow oven. Otherwise, you'll get failures,
yeah.
and not all manufacturers know about that or do it well. So, and the
Mm.
WS family is notorious for failing in that way if the manufacturer did not kind of you bake them at a low temperature before soldering them onto the strips and onto the boards.
And you bake out the moisture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our manufacturer, we actually have a couple manufacturers, and we use different manufacturers depending on the type of product that we're doing. But like the manufacturer that we use for strip very much focuses on addressable pixels. And a lot of the knowledge that we have about the addressable chipsets has come through working with this manufacturer. And they're good. I trust them.
Totally, it's good to
Yeah.
have that. Yeah, we have not reached a scale or a maturity where we have those kinds of relationships yet. And honestly, we're probably going to end up ordering things on AliExpress from trusted vendors, but not yet do our own custom stuff. Maybe for the next installation. I definitely see this as being installation number one out of many. But yeah,
Well,
got to
listen,
start
man, I would
somewhere.
love to work with you guys on the manufacture of custom parts.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
something that we do really well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just keep that in
I
mind.
would love to have that conversation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in the city right now, right? That's where you live?
I moved from San Francisco to East Bay very recently. After 10 years in the city, I finally moved out to the hills.
That's right, because when I called you and we were talking about the development thing, I remember you had told me you had just moved. How you liking it? What do you think of the East Bay?
I love it. I have suddenly an awareness of the seasons, which I never had in the
Yeah,
city. I look out my
right?
window and I can see the birds and I can see how they change between the seasons. And that's amazing. I think the real test is going to be once pandemic ends and things start opening up again. And maybe I won't appreciate being as isolated. But
Yeah.
let's wait a few months and see.
Where are you at in the East Bay?
I'm in Piedmont Pines, which is kind of next to Montclair, up in the
So up in the
hills.
hills.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
it's
That's
gorgeous.
such a beautiful area. Me and Felicia just went on a mushroom hike up in the redwoods. It
Yeah,
was like fucking so healing. It's
yeah,
so good.
yeah,
Yeah, she just got a new place down by Lake Merritt, like kind of like
yeah,
North Lake, and it's a nice area. I've never lived by the lake before. I've actually I don't know if you know Lumen Labs, but it's like kind of down the bottom of Berkeley. You'll
yeah.
have to come by.
Oh,
It's
I
a
know
cool
Lumen.
spot.
Yeah, I've been there quite a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah. And it's cool to like spend time in a different part of Oakland, different part of the East Bay,
Yeah,
you know?
totally. It's different. I went there the first time I was at Lumen. I think was when I approached Brian and Mark maybe 5 or 6 years ago about
Yeah.
collaborating on something. But I've
Yeah.
been to many parties there and LED meetups, and it's always some excuse to go there. I think the
Yeah.
most
I wonder if
recent,
we met at like I feel like we must have met, man. We must have met.
yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the swamp party was the last party I was at. I can't
That was the one with the crazy skeleton that came in.
maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I was there for that one. I was out in I was in Cape Town during that period. But yeah, I saw pictures.
Yeah, it was great. And I think there were a few meetups there. That, like the LED or LEDs are also meetups that happen there.
Yeah, I must have met you at those because I was at every single one of those with Molly Maloof. I actually just talked to her because this other thing that we're doing is very much like lighting and health and like so we were just like Molly, like what's
Yeah,
going on?
totally.
Come and
This
be an
is
advisor.
the UV LEDs for killing viruses, right?
Yeah, it's like yeah, essentially circadian UV LED.
Cool.
Combine them both in the same fixture, you've got 24-hour cycle.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good, man. It's coming right along and like it's generating a lot of interest. So
Nice. Good luck. That sounds exciting.
yeah, it's fun and it's really fun. Like honestly, I'm most excited about the control system that we're using. It's based on the Home Assistant platform, which is open source. It's
Yeah.
like open source IoT.
Yep.
It is so cool, man. Like physical computing is awesome. Like creating rules that express themselves in the real environment is much like LED art. It's like you write code, you see it in the real world,
Yeah.
and it's like that's fucking cool. I'm very passionate about that. I
Yeah,
like
and
that.
that's also kind of configuration as opposed to code that's making things
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely.
That's also something that I looked at when thinking about my pattern engine as an inspiration for sure. And I'm
Yeah.
using the same, ESP32 that's all based on. So
Well, so Home Assistant's Raspberry primarily it runs on a plethora of different platforms. It does have an ESP32 plugin or like add-on or whatever,
yeah,
but
you're right. The server itself is a Raspberry. I
well,
guess I was thinking of the
it's
small.
actually anything.
Yeah,
It could be a virtual machine. It could be a Raspberry. Like there's so many different things that it can run on.
mm-hmm.
But it is that paradigm of like configuration
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
service.
I
You
was
know what I
thinking
mean?
of ESP Home, not Home Assistant. And ESP Home is basically this configuration file where you configure the pins and the inputs and the outputs, and this is a button and this is a knob and this controls a light, and it compiles the firmware for you, updates it for you over the air, and that's you can have like an IoT widget without knowing how to code, but it's still customized and tailored for your needs, and then it will talk to Home Assistant over whatever MQTT or whatever.
Yeah, I've seen that plugin.
Yeah.
I've seen the other end of that. I've never fucked with like creating my own IoT devices, but I've definitely fucked with tying in like anything that will talk. There's a lot of interesting protocols arising around like IoT, because you've got the IoT in the sense of like smart cities, and then you've got commercial spaces, and then you've got like residential spaces, and all of these are using different all of these are using different protocols, but they're all like Home Assistant is an operating system for physical space. That's what Home Assistant is fundamentally. And it's like with that operating system, you can plug in anything and create rules that coordinate behaviors between any of these systems. And that's why it's so magical. That's why it's so powerful, is because it's so fucking open. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we might use it for our installation, by the way. We're definitely thinking of using MQTT for having all of the controllers talk to each other and broadcast events and respond to sensors. In a world in which each individual plant knows its XY location and share a time base, if you broadcast, this kind of event happened in this location at this time, anyone can choose to respond to it or not. If it's within range, if it's responding to those kinds of events, a lot of the home automation and IoT paradigms are very much relevant for this thing that we're building. So we may end up actually using Home Assistant, but I'm not sure about that yet.
What do you think about MQTT? Well, if you do end up using Home Assistant, man, I've literally spent the last year and a half fucking deep diving into that shit. I know it.
Yeah.
But what do you think about MQTT as a protocol?
It solves the problem that it's meant to solve. It, for whatever reason, is the one that has been adopted by the community.
I think it's messy as fuck.
It is. It's the one that gets adopted is not always the best one, but there are implementations for all of the different IoT platforms out there. There are brokers, and today when you go to Adafruit IoT, it's an MQTT broker, and you have the script that automatically installs a broker on your Raspberry Pi. And
is Adafruit jumping in the IoT game?
Yeah, I think I can't remember. It was like io.adafruit. whatever. or IoT whatever, but you open an account there and they will give you like an internet accessible MQTT broker, and you can have all of your IoT widgets talking to the Adafruit server, and you have graphs and control panels, and everyone's getting in on that game. And MQTT seems to be the language that they're all speaking. But having kind of a pub sub kind of framework, there are dozens of them. And any one of them could have been the one that takes hold. And I think the fact that there were low resource implementations for embedded platforms for MQTT, it ended up winning because of that. Someone wrote the Arduino implementation and the ESP implementation. And when all of your end devices that are super small and cheap can speak that protocol, then that's the protocol you end up with.
Right. And that's kind of the paradigm that we're trying to follow with this thing, man. It's like, be as open as possible, right? Integrate with as many different services and devices as possible. Because if you can do that, then there's no reason not to use your system.
Well, unless you're like Apple and they're like, hey, we have our
I think that's an outdated way of thinking, man. I honestly do. I agree
100%. And I don't think that my stuff does kind of support Google Assistant, but even that is more closed than I want it to be. I think Amazon
should have a way for somebody
is the easiest one to integrate with at the moment. But
you should totally have a way for somebody to be like, hey Canopy. Or like, you should
Yeah,
make those API. You should tie into those.
I did it for the DMX controller. You can say, "Hey, change the light to blue" or whatever, and it works through
Right.
Canopy.
Yeah. I mean, that's like people, you're going to have a bunch of customers who are going to want to do that, dude. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Especially if your shit's really that easy to use, you're going to have a lot of people on Amazon buying your controller and being like, I want to hook my Philips Hues up to these. You know what I mean?
I know,
It's going to happen. And then they're going to call you for tech support. And then you're going to hate your life.
Yeah, I'm going to know that I'm doing the right thing when Philips sue me. That's how you know that you're making it in that world.
I know. Well, I mean, if you're not actually pimping LED pixels, then they have no reason to. Philips will sue you if so. Philips owns the patent on the blue LED diode. Or no. Yeah, the blue LED diode and the method of PWM dimming. Think about that. Philips owns a patent on PWM, which means if you're color mixing with PWM, which is the only way to color mix with an LED diode, you will open yourself up to a lawsuit from Philips. And that is a bullshit patent, right? It should not be allowed to exist. However, Philips owns it, and they will essentially like Mafia Don slam you for 10% of your gross revenue if you're deemed big enough for them to waste their lawyer dollars on.
Yeah, that's relevant to anything with an LED, but I think they have patents that are specific to a network controllable lighting fixture that changes colors that you can control with an app, or something like that. And I looked into this at the time because before this installation, my goal was to make these controllers and to make maybe light fixtures. And I looked into it, and they just had all of those patents. And I figured, well, what if it's not a light fixture? What if it's an art piece? And you can change its pattern, but it's not for the purposes of light. It's for the purposes of art. And I think that that's okay. That is not patented by them. But yeah, either way, I'm not.
Well, it's interesting.
Actually worried about them suing me. But...
Yeah, I mean, like until you get big, there's no reason to. Yeah. But like, I think that like there's a lot of light bulbs that are doing what the Hue is doing.
Yeah,
there are. You know, and those things are being sold. Like you go on Amazon right now, look for like Wi-Fi controllable.
Yeah, that's all Chinese brands that don't really care about international copyright law. Usually.
God, I love Chinese brands. That's the flip side is they will copy your shit instantly, man. So like Brian, Mark, and I worked on a project probably 8 years ago, and we developed a PCB that immediately got
duplicated.
You can go on Adafruit now, and you can see. Yeah, man, the round that round fucking pixel platter. It's like it's the same PCB layout. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's what happens. It's a double-edged sword. It's like cheap LED stuff, but your shit's gonna get copied. But if you go into things expecting that, then it's not necessarily that big a deal. You can like plan your business model around that fact.
Exactly. I think the way I think about, definitely when thinking about making controllers and making a business out of them, that is a concern. Why won't China just copy it and race to the bottom? And I think that
dude, you're not making.
Yeah, it's
you're not making a controller. Yeah. You're making software, my friend. Yeah. You are making something that China cannot copy because you're not loading that shit onto your controller until afterwards, right? Even if
But I am open sourcing Canopy, so that kind of leaves the closed part is going to be the plumbing that makes it a seamless experience where you just plug it in and edit live and use the web USB interface and like all of that. The plumbing is actually harder than the Canopy engine itself. I want Canopy to be open. I want you to be able to use the editor online, spit out the configuration, put it in your Arduino for free. Doesn't have to go through me at all. But if you want the experience, if you don't even want to buy an Arduino and use the IDE, if you just want to buy it on Amazon and plug it in and have it work, then China won't copy that as easily. And that's
interesting. And it's interesting. It's like, I agree with you 100% on open sourcing your software. I think that's a great thing to do. And I think that the hardware that you're developing if it's slick, it will sell, but China will copy it.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll probably develop their own Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a tricky question. That's a tricky place to be. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the LED controllers that we see from China are not very impressive on the software side.
Oh, it's all bullshit, man.
Here are 200 patterns that you can rotate through one by one, and they are slightly different from each other, and they all kind of suck.
Okay, so here's the difference. China makes amazing hardware, or they're amazing at making and copying hardware, but their software, they've always turned to the West for design, right? Like that like most of my artist friends, many of my artist friends spend a lot of their time in Asia, right? Like creating programming for Chinese like architectural features, and it's because they turn to the West for design, and that is like one thing but that's starting to change, man. There's a whole scene of native Asian born light artists that are coming up. I'm on their lists. Like I want to, yeah, it's like there is a like a native Asian art scene, light art scene that's coming up, which is really cool. Yeah.
I'm hoping that when this world is open to non-programmers, I'm hoping that we'll see a huge rise and influx of LED artists that can suddenly do what they couldn't do previously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that a really easy to use tool would enable sculpture artists, for example, to create their own patterns. I think that there will always be a role for the quote unquote professional light artists, right? Because I think that anybody who focuses 100% of their time thinking and breathing light art and the nuance of light art will always have a role, right? But I think that opening the world up, just like DSLR, camera phones opened up photography to the layman, right? There will be people who create epic light art who have no like professional experience, but I think that there will always be a role for professional artists who focus on the light arts.
Agreed.
Simply because like large scale light art is fucking technically complicated, man. It's electrically complicated. And it's, if you're going to create a large scale art piece, like you're going to like just the power in problems, right? 90% of LED problems come down to power, right?
100%.
Like correct grounding, right? Like voltage drop. Like these are issues these are physics. This is physics, and it's like, it's experience that allow you to conquer those challenges. Proper weatherproofing, all this shit, it's like being a carpenter. Yeah.
Definitely a lot of trial and error on those things. I don't know if you've seen the Ferris wheel in Golden Gate Park.
Not in Golden Gate Park, no.
It's a giant installation. It'll be there for a few more months. As any giant installation Ferris wheel-like thing, it has a lot of LEDs on it, and frankly, they are a disaster.
I've always wanted to do a Ferris wheel.
Right? It's like a very iconic lit thing.
Yeah.
But it's running at a solid like 5 frames per second, maybe 10 frames per second. And and honestly, a lot of people don't notice that. I went there with my date, and she was like, "Yeah, I can't. I don't know what you're talking about."
Oh my god! Yeah,
and it hurts me, but yeah. And a lot of buildings in China are like that too.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are, and that's it's easy to splooge LEDs all over everything. It's hard to make them look good. So what's that? That skyscraper in San Francisco, and it's like it's this beautiful skyline of San Francisco, and then you've got this one building that has like chunky patterns of RGB that just like cycle around it, like this like it's like they installed LEDs and the controllers, and then they ran a test pattern, and they were like, yeah, good enough. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm gonna go knock on that fucking door,
I
dude.
see it when on the Bay Bridge driving towards the city.
Yeah,
yeah, totally. I know exactly what you mean. It is,
and it's like I just want to go bang on the door and be like, "Give me your facilities manager. I am going to have a talk."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in,
It's
I
things
think
like
that
that.
City Hall actually did a good job. They only have the theater, the par lights. It's not the individually addressable or anything like that. But whoever did the lighting design there is actually uh, feels competent. It's
Yeah.
nice and
Well,
diffuse and colors and high frame rate and good for them.
yep. Yeah. Smooth fades, no hot spots.
Yeah.
Um, nice coordination of color and motion. Like these are fundamental artistic principles, right? It's like I maintain that like the basis of most visual art is it's like principles of photography, right? And cinematography. It's like these same principles can be conveyed to almost all other visual
Just
arts,
another
you know.
visual medium. And, yep.
Yeah, but the principle, the core principles are fundamentally the same, and it's like, you know, spacing and color coordination and the smooth flow of motion through a frame or through your field of view or across your canvas, you know. Um,
Yep.
this is like these are the, you know, like the better artists, man. Like when you're just starting out, you know, it's all about flash and trash, all about flash and trash, right? I started out as a VJ, right? And like the beginning of my career was just like
Yeah.
hammering on the fucking faders.
Yeah.
And then like as you get older, as you get more experienced, it
Yeah. More and
becomes
more subtle.
slower. It's about the subtlety
Yeah.
and the nuance, right? And that's how
That
you
LFO
mature.
is just between like the 60% and the 70% of that purple. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And that's like how you, when you meet somebody who's reached that level of maturity in their art form, you're like, wow, this is cool. And you can appreciate that. And it's like, that's what I love, man. I love talking to artists. I do. Because everybody's got their own aesthetic and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like people have art that I'm like, well, I think that's kind of ugly, but I see how you've nurtured that aesthetic to the point where you're at. And it's like you can appreciate artists when they get to that level of nuance,
Yeah.
even if you don't like their aesthetic.
Yep. Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Agreed. I mean
Yeah.
that feeling, what I described before of they get it. I don't always like. Yeah, it's not something I would want in my room or in my house.
Right.
But you see it, and you're like, I get it. You know what you're
Yeah.
doing. You are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You've gone through the. Yeah. You've walked the path, and you know what you're doing.
Yeah, man. And it's funny. It's like, it's been such an interesting journey. Like, it, I'll tell you, starting a business was a really hard thing for becoming a good business owner and a good person while owning a business that focused on light art was a long journey for me. You know, like I started out and I fucked it up hard, man. Like not crazy, but it was like I was focused on the wrong things and I like it took me a while. It took me like a couple years to really like find a balance between like, okay, I'm trying to grow this business and I'm trying to like express my personality as an artist and I'm trying to combine those two things and I'm trying to like yeah, it's just it's a journey. It really is a journey.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say. You get it right the third time.
Yeah, you do, man. You definitely do. Definitely do.
Yeah. I've definitely had my fair share of lessons learned and battle scars for sure.
Well, I'm stoked, man. I'm really stoked to see what you do. I'm stoked to see these environments that you're creating. I'm really excited to get to play with the software platform that you're developing. Like that's really exciting for me. Like
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
cool to see new novel tools because it opens up new doors.
Yeah, I'm excited to share it. And despite its
Yeah.
very raw form right now, I think I'll be able to convey to you the general concept and what I'm trying to achieve here.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, man. It's I'd be happy to help like just bounce ideas and yeah. Cool. Well, we're almost at 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed.
Thank you so much.
If this didn't fucking record, dude, I'm gonna be so pissed.
I can still see the waveform for both of us on the
Can
bottom.
you? Okay, good. All right, good. All right, brother. Cool. Well, let's hang out when you.
Yeah, totally.
Let's hang out. We should
Absolutely.
hang out in person.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
Talk soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye bye.